This is John Colo at DiscountJuicers.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. And what we're going to do today for you guys is actually do a juice-off comparison test. One of my favorite things to do here on YouTube, where I compare two juicers head-to-head against each other, juicing the equivalent and same amounts of produce to see which one will yield supreme. Now, besides just juicing the same amount of produce, I also compare how the machines work, how they're similar, and how they're different. So in case you guys are looking to buy a juicer, you guys can get the right juicer for you. That's very important to me here at DiscountJuicers.com. And I would encourage you guys, if you're looking to buy a juicer, please support me and my work by making your purchase at DiscountJuicers.com. This allows me to continue to make these juice-off comparison videos, as well as all the other videos that I make on YouTube, educating people about the power of fruits and vegetables, why you should eat them, how to grow them, and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you guys, and thank you guys that have purchased from me in the past, and I want to thank you guys in advance for purchasing from me when you do shop and purchase your juicer, if you are looking to buy a juicer. So with that being said, we're going to compare these two machines, and if these aren't the two machines that you're looking for, be sure to check my past episodes. I have over 450 videos now on this YouTube channel comparing different juicers against one another so that you guys could get the exact best juicer for you. In any case, today's two juicers we have today is the Omega VSJ843 over on this side. This is a vertical single auger slow juicer. And over on this side, we have the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer model B6000. This is also a vertical single auger juicer. So you're thinking, John, these are both vertical single auger juicers. How are they different? Well, the main difference between them is that on the Kuvings, as you guys can see, it's got a nice wide 3-inch feed chute. So this makes feeding produce into the juicer significantly easier. Over on the Omega, as you guys can see, the feed chute is much smaller. There's the comparison for you guys. This one has only a 2.5-inch by 1.5-inch approximately feed chute. So that's roughly half the size, maybe a little bit less than half the size of the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. Now, a large feed chute is just one of the many features that you may desire on a juicer. You know, there's many different features and qualities about a juicer, and you know, my hopes by making these videos is that to teach you guys about them. You know, as much as the wide feed chute is nice, it allows you to put some certain produce items into the machine without cutting. Other ones will still require cutting. And then the other thing is that, you know, even though it has a big feed chute, doesn't mean the yield, the performance, and all this kind of stuff is going to be the same as the VSJ843 on this side. So let's get right into the comparison of these two vertical single auger juicers. Alright, so you guys saw the two feed chutes. Mainly this one has a larger feed chute, this has a smaller feed chute. I do like that this is kind of like a smoke plastic, so you can kind of look through there and kind of see what's going on inside the machine. Next we have the augers. The Omega VSJ843 has basically a dual blade on here that basically helps kind of cut up the produce as it's going in to reduce it to a smaller size, so it's more efficient. On the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, they have just one nice large auger with basically no cutting area. You just put the produce in there and it literally crushes it on up and then brings it down in the auger and then squeezes out the juice through the screen. Now on the bottom of the VSJ auger, you see it's actually indented, so you could actually stick your finger in there. It is normal for pulp to get collected in there once you start juicing and when you're done cleaning. On the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, there's actually no indentation on the bottom. I do really like the indentation on the bottom. This gives basically a relief for where the pulp can go. In the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer and other juicers with a solid bottom, I have seen sometimes the pulp gets backed up in the machine. The pulp will get underneath here and actually jack the auger up and then make it hard to disassemble the machine. So yeah, and then the other thing on the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, they do have the teeth on the bottom of the screen, and that's actually to drive the screen, the wiping blade that goes around the screen. And on the Omega VSJ, there's actually these two wings on the top that actually drive the screen, so there's no teeth on the bottom. I like that there's no teeth on the VSJ because it makes it easier to clean. The teeth are more nooks and crannies that you guys are going to have to clean. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at the juicing screens. Here's a screen on the VSJ843, and here is a screen on the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. And if we look at these guys, you know, they look kind of similar, but they're a little bit different. Basically, by looking at it, it looks like on the first stage juicing holes of the VSJ, the holes are actually larger, and on the Kuvings, they're actually smaller. And then on the second stage, it looks like the holes are, I don't know, approximately the same size. Now, it looks like to me that the area for the juicing screen is probably a little bit more on the VSJ, which means it may get more yield than the Kuvings. It actually has a little bit less screen area. Now, the main difference between these screens is actually if you look to the bottom of the screen, basically this is basically kind of like a funnel. It's set up like a funnel, and the pulp is directed down through the bottom of the screen. And then over on the Kuvings, it's like a funnel, but then there's like a little ledge or a lip on the bottom of this, and there's a hole right here. And if you notice on the VSJ, there is no hole. So what this hole does is actually after the pulp gets ground up, all the pulp actually has to go through this hole and then through a secondary hole in the bottom of the juicing bowl to get ejected or pushed out of the juicer. And this is a major blockage point I've seen on many vertical slow juicers. I would call this a first generation vertical slow juicer, but it has a hole in the bottom of the screen. I do not recommend you guys buy this after seeing the performance that can be obtained, you know, with a machine without the hole, such as the Omega VSJ843 and the Slow Star juicer. Are currently the only two juicers that I'm aware of that don't have a hole in the bottom of the screen. They back up significantly less and work better based on my experience. Finally, we have the automatic wiping blade on both juicers. Now, the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer actually has 3 different wiping blades here. They're all the silicone material. And then over on the VSJ, they only have 2. The 2 on these sides are actually just fake. They look like they're something, but they're not. They're just molded plastic. So that's going to be a little bit easier to clean on the VSJ since there's less nooks and crannies. In addition, the bottom of the juicing screens, once again, this has the little drive gear that's going to drive the wiping blade that drives this. And then on the bottom of the VSJ, there is none. So this means that there's more nooks and crannies on the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. And then finally we get down to the bowls. The bowls are fairly similar. It looks like the Kuvings bowls may be a little bit larger. I do not recommend actually mixing juice inside the machines. Also, the Kuvings actually has this little gear here that drives that screen wiper. In addition, the bottom of this is actually just totally flat. There's no, it's not raised up, so this may mean you may get more leakage on the bottom. And of course, on the back of this, there's a little flap. Now this flap, the job of this flap is to keep the pulp inside the machine for as long as possible before it gets ejected out. So always juice with this flap in, and when you're cleaning it, pull it out. The flap here is actually a lot larger, and the hole in the bottom of the juicer is a lot larger than on the Omega VSJ. Of course, both have a little flap that you could close to prevent drips and leaking on your counter, and also mix inside your juicing bowl. So that's the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. And then over on the VSJ, basically once again they have that flap, a little bit nicer design. It's a little bit more cleaner. There's not like a ring around it. And then the outlet port on the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, it's a little bit more narrow. On the VSJ it's actually a little bit bigger, so I could get my pinky in there to kind of clean it out when I'm done cleaning. Once again, it has that little flap on the bottom. A little bit smaller, less to clean. Also has a smaller hole where the pulp goes through. So what this may mean it's keeping the pulp inside the juicer for a longer period of time before it gets ejected. Also on the bottom of this unit, instead of just being flat straight across the board, it's actually got a little trough. It's kind of like a moat in a castle, so like the invaders can't get across the moat and invade the castle. In this, there's a juice moat. So the juice moat fills up the juice and the juice is ejected, and that way the juice and the extra pulp won't necessarily fall on the top of the base of the motor like it may on the Kuvings if the bushing is not working properly. So yeah, that's basically how these two all the different parts, the similarities and the differences. Oh, before we get into the next part is, I want to talk about the motor bases. So the motor bases are fairly similar. Let's see if we pick this up. It's kind of heavy, and this guy, they're both kind of heavy. I think the VSJ seems a little bit more heavier to me. That being said, just per ratings, the Kuvings actually has a more powerful motor with more torque. You know, I have put in whole carrots in this, and it just crunches it up. On the VSJ, whole carrots may stop it, where you will have to actually hit the reverse, hit the forward to get it to juice your carrots. If you're going to juice a lot of carrots, you may not want to get the VSJ, and you definitely want to watch the video I made juicing carrots in the VSJ to share with you guys my techniques on that. Final thing I want to say is that the RPMs of both these machines, 78 RPMs on the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer and 43 RPMs on the VSJ. So that's almost half the speed of the Kuvings. Does this mean it's going to take you longer to juice? Does this mean you're going to get a higher, nutrition quality due to the lower RPMs? Well, 40 RPMs is not a big difference, but going from like 80 RPMs to like 10,000 or 12,000 RPMs, that's a big difference, and I believe that will significantly change the quality of the juice. Now, the Omega VSJ843 has a 15-year warranty, and the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer has a 10-year warranty. So these are actually quite long warranties. Most inexpensive juicers, unfortunately, have only a short 90-day, maybe 1-year warranty if you're lucky. Omega leads the field with the longest warranty in the juicing industry, and that's something I like. Next, let's go ahead and reassemble the machines. They're both super simple, super easy. You can do it with your eyes shut once you do it a couple times. So both bowls basically just sit on top of the machine. Then you're going to take your wiping blade, put your juicing screen in there, and press that all the way in. Then on the VSJ, you basically just push that down in there and turn it. It kind of drops into place. You're going to then take your auger, put your auger in there, and then line the top of the auger up with the little recesses in the wiping blade. Then finally you take the little orange arrow here and put it over to this side, and then line up the orange arrow with the other orange arrow, snaps into place, and if you've done that correctly, the machine will turn on. Say for example, if you don't have that assembled correctly, you could turn it on and the machine will not come on. So it's very important to assemble the machine correctly. Over on the Kuvings, similar process, except you have a lot of different red dots. The VSJ actually has no red dots to line up. Basically, you're going to take the wiping blade and put it in the juicing screen first off. Then you're going to take the red dot there, line it up with the red dot on top of the bowl, put that in place. Then you're going to go ahead and take your auger, slide that down in, make sure it's fully seated down in the bottom. And then finally, you're going to go ahead and take the top, and you're going to take this arrow and line it over to the open, and then go to the close, and then you're all set. And when you're assembled properly, it'll turn on, and there you go. That seems a bit louder to me than the VSJ over here. What do you guys think? I think so. In any case, that's how both juicers work. And this juicer is probably better for juicing if you're going to juice like tons of apples, because you can just put them in whole. You don't have to cut them into small bits like you will on the VSJ. That being said, the vertical juicers are some of the best juicers for juicing a wide variety of produce items, from fruits and vegetables, different kinds of fruits. And I do recommend juicing, if you are juicing fruits, juice hard, firm fruits. Also juicing hard vegetables, also leafy greens. And so they each do fairly well at all these different items. That being said, on celery and greens such as Swiss chard and kale, I do recommend you guys cut those up before feeding them into the Kuvings, despite the large feed chute, because the fiber strings will get caught in the bottom of that screen that I showed you. I always recommend cutting it for the produce, similar produce items in the VSJ. That being said, if you're not juicing a large quantity of juice, you can get away without pre-cutting those produce items due to the design that there's no hole in the bottom of the screen, and they have that little blade, the dual blades on top of the VSJ that'll actually help cut the produce up. So yeah, that's how both these guys compare. Now I want to come back at you, and we're going to get set up and do an actual juice off, where we're going to juice 1 pound of spinach in both machines. So now I'm all ready and set up to juice. We have even 4-cup catch containers for each juicer. And we got 2 pounds of the baby spinach, pre-weighed, earthbound greens. I always encourage you guys to juice organic greens whenever you can get it. And then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take 2 strainers, because these 2 juicers may put out different amounts of pulp in the juice, and I want to be able to strain out the pulp and the foam just to get the actual juice yield. So we're going to go ahead and put 1 strainer on each of the catch containers so we can get a fair fight. The other thing I'm going to do for you guys is actually go ahead and time this juice off session for each juicer, so you guys can see how long it takes to juice in each of the machines, if one is faster or slower than the other. Now, I'm juicing straight leafy greens today. Leafy greens are the most nutrient-dense food on the planet, and that's the food that I encourage you guys to really ramp up and eat more of. And this is really easy when juicing in a juicer, because literally you could take a pound of greens, and when you juice it, it should turn into about a cup of juice on average, depending on what juicer you're using. Some juicers produce less, and some juicers will hit that 1 cup mark. So it'll be interesting to see how each of these 2 juicers juice the leafy greens. That being said, I encourage you guys, if you guys want to juice strictly or only leafy greens, you want to get a horizontal single auger juicer instead of a vertical single auger juicer. In general, those juicers juice the leafy greens better than the verticals that tend to make more foam in your juice. I do recommend, generally, if you're juicing straight greens, to also juice something like carrots or celery with it in the vertical single auger juicers and rotate. So put a little bit of spinach, a little bit of carrot, a little bit of spinach, a little bit of carrot until you're done. That'll work significantly better than just trying to feed in straight greens like I'm doing today. It actually may back up some vertical single auger juicers. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get juicing. I think I'm going to go ahead and first juice in the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. So let me go ahead and set up the stopwatch for you on my phone. All right, we're going to go ahead and press start. All right, and we're off. Now we got to rip this top off and get juicing in the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. All right, due to the nice large feed chute, we could just take big handfuls of spinach and put it in, although sometimes the spinach will overflow since they don't have a nice funnel to catch it like the Omega VSJ843 does. As you guys can see, I'm just putting the spinach handful by handful. It's actually fairly easy. Nothing has really started juicing yet. Oh, I see some juice starting to come out and starting to drip out. I think what we'll do for you guys is we'll speed this up so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me feed all this spinach in. Alright, looks like we're down to the last bit of spinach for the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. Last couple pieces there. Alright, so pretty much I got all the spinach out, and what we need to do now is actually just use the pusher to push the spinach in, because all the spinach is basically just sitting in the feed chute. So when you're doing that, make sure to push slow and steady. Don't just try to cram it in there as fast as you can. Give the machine some time to work. As you guys can see over on this side, the pulp is coming out, and we got plenty of juice coming out along with some foam. Let's go ahead and push some more into the juicer. This would work significantly better if you're just like using some alternating spinach with some celery or something like that, or spinach and carrots. Alright, I think we're down. We basically pushed as much as we can into the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. And just looking down the chute there, I see some spinach that actually didn't totally get sucked into the juicer. And that's just due to part of the design. This has happened when I've juiced many different things in the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. I'm going to continue to try to ram the pusher up and down. Oh, and finally it looks like it probably accepted virtually all the spinach. At least all the spinach is out of the feed chute, and it's actually getting sucked in the machine. So, still see some pulp at the top that's actually not getting sucked in. Now once you put all the produce into any vertical single auger juicer, you want to let it run for a little bit, maybe another 30-60 seconds, until it fully is able to juice everything that you put into it. The main way to know is if you see juice coming out of the pores, which I'm still seeing, and actually the pulp is still moving. So the pulp is still moving, so we're going to go ahead and continue to let this run just a little bit more. Alright, so to me it looks like the pulp has stopped coming out of the juicer, although it's still dripping. I can see it for another 5 minutes, let it drip, but we got to cut this off at some point, so let's go ahead and take a look at the time. Looks like 5 minutes and 19 seconds. We're going to go ahead and stop and reset that, and we're going to go ahead and go over to the VSJ843 next. Let's go ahead and turn off the Kuvings. Continue to let that drip. Now we're going to go ahead and juice in the Omega VSJ843. Technically the VSJ843 is a little bit newer juicer than the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. Alright, so let's go ahead and hit start and let's get juicing. We're just going to go ahead and take handfuls of the spinach and put it in to the Omega VSJ. Taking a little bit of care to just put smaller handfuls because the feed chute's not quite as large. Really, the large feed chute really helps you out when you're juicing large things like apples and pears and tomatoes and carrots. Maybe not so much. It might take you a little bit extra time to feed in the spinach, but we'll see if it's worth it after we juice in the VSJ. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward this till I'm about done. Alright, down the last handful of greens going into the Omega VSJ843. And that's it. Finally, we'll need to use the pusher to push the greens into the VSJ843. Nice and gently and slowly. As you guys can see, lots of juice coming out through the Omega VSJ843 screen. Of course, the last thing we need to do is we need to let the VSJ843 run. Pulp is still flowing, that means the machine's still working, and we're going to just wait for it to juice a little bit more. Alright, so it looks like the pulp is pretty much stopped flowing out of the VSJ843. We're going to go ahead and turn this off. Took about 6 minutes on the VSJ843. I think feeding in the produce took probably about similar amounts of time. Just maybe letting the machine run. It looks like maybe the VSJ want to keep kicking out a little bit more pulp than the Kuvings, so I let it run a bit longer. Let's go ahead and turn that baby off. I guess the next thing I want to do is actually compare the pulp that came out of the machine for you guys. So this is the pulp that came out of the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. This is the pulp that came out of the Omega VSJ. Probably to you on the camera, probably looks fairly similar. Let's go ahead and get that in my hand. And here's my hand, and here's me squeezing it. So you can see all the juice, it's dripping out. There's a few drops in there. Now we're going to do the same with the pulp from the VSJ. As you guys can see, it's squeezing the pulp out of my hand in very few drops. So it looks like the VSJ just from the pulp being squeezed was more efficient. And let's see if that actually works out to more efficient actually when we compare the yields on both machines. Let's go ahead and move these guys over. So first we should strain it out. I do want to say that the Kuvings, since I juiced first in that, it had some time to settle out a little bit, whereas the VSJ, I just got done juicing, so it hasn't had time to settle out. It looks like the VSJ actually made a little bit more foam than the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, but it looks like the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, by looking at the bottom, it's a little bit darker. It looks like the Kuvings made more pulp. I could easily feel this because the weight of this strainer is heavier. The weight of this strainer is a lot lighter. So let's go ahead now and do a close-up for you guys on the juice yields. First, let's go ahead and take a look at how much the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer made. And if we look very closely, if we look at the little marks, looks like we got just under 275 milliliters, maybe a line or two under that. Then if we go ahead and go over to the Omega VSJ843 side, let's see, looks like we got just about 275 milliliters. We also created a lot more foam on the Omega VSJ843, which is actually quite interesting. So as you guys just saw, the Omega VSJ843 literally won by hair, made a little bit more juice than the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, although it definitely had a lot less pulp in the juice, but it did make more foam. You know, once again, every juicer has our pros and cons, and then one of the reasons why I make these videos for you guys is to show you guys what happens when you juice equal amounts of produce in both machines. Now I do want to let you guys know that a horizontal single auger juicer such as the Omega NC800 by Omega would do a far better job juicing these leafy greens because they would not make as much foam. Now we're going to go ahead and try the 100% spinach juice here from the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer. I mean, it tastes like spinach juice, actually kind of strong. Next, we're going to go ahead and try the Omega VSJ843 spinach juice. I mean, they both taste strong. I have to dilute that down with some apple juice or something like that. But as you guys can see, both these vertical single auger juicers juice the spinach just fine. I do want to let you guys know that I did compare these juicers previously in another video. I'll put a link down below if I remember. When I juiced cucumbers in the same exact juicers, and the Omega VSJ actually made more yield than the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer in that video also. You know, I always like to tell you guys each juicer has their pros and cons. You know, in this case, I'm going to have to declare the winner, the VSJ843. You know, it's not clean cut because, you know, the yields were so close. The juicing time, amazingly, on the leafy greens took a similar amount of time, just due to the fact that you have to put them all in the feed chute and you know, shove them into the juicer with the pusher. So that wasn't too different. I mean, this machine does actually cost the same amount as a Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, but you also get a 5-year extra warranty. And in general, based on my experience, you know, this juicer will put less juice in the pulp, or less pulp in the juice, and in general make a little bit higher yield than the Kuvings overall. I mean, the Kuvings actually has, you know, on it basically that it's a little bit less hassle because you have to cut things less as long as they're not like, you know, long pieces of kale or collard greens or Swiss chard with the strings in it, or the celery. If you guys enjoyed this episode, hey, please give me a thumbs up on the video. Also be sure to support me and my work by making your purchase at discountjuicers.com. Also, click that subscribe button right down below. Kuvings any day now is going to be coming out with our all-new next generation model of the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer, which I even hope will even perform better than the VSJ843. We're going to have to wait and watch for that. So yeah, click subscribe, be notified when that new Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer comes out, their next model. Also be sure to check my past episodes. I have a wealth of information contained in over 450 videos comparing juicers, dehydrators, and blenders so you guys can make the right purchase for you. Also be sure to share this video with somebody that you think they should juice some green juice. You're probably doing me a favor. So once again, this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors. Alright, this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you, and what I'm going to do in this episode is share with you guys the best way to get more vegetables in you. So congratulations, if you clicked on this video, you probably don't like vegetables or don't like them too much, and maybe even hate them. But you know that they are beneficial and that you should be getting more into. So before I share with you guys the